The establishment, we talked about the establishment of Jamestown, and we had talked about the establishment of the New England colonies, and we said that the basis for their establishment kind of led to their differences. What type, what motivation was there to establish Jamestown? What motivation was there to establish the New England colonies? That led to what types of people moved to those colonies? What did they do for a living? Who did they bring with them? So you've got a lot of single men living in the Chesapeake looking to make quick bucks, and they find their money producing tobacco. You got a lot of families in New England because they're there for what reason? Religious reasons. And, you're bringing families, and when you're able to bring families, you already have an established center of wealth in your family. So the people in New England generally tended to be more prosperous. And if you look at this map is great because it shows the expansion of the New England settlements throughout the 1600s. And you've got people, here's Plymouth, 1620, here's Massachusetts Bay, 1630, and by 1636, they're already out here in Connecticut. By 1639, they're already out here in New York. They're butting heads with the Dutch, with those Dutch patroons. So, what can you tell, what can you deduce, what can you infer just by looking at this map about the population in New England?
It's growing rapidly.
Okay, so to what do you attribute that?
The families that moved over, so more women.
All right, there's families that moved over, there are more women, therefore, ergo, ipso facto, you're going to have more children. Okay, what else do you attribute this population growth? And by the way, population growth is rapid. Go ahead. They did have problems with the natives. The Pequot War, the King Philip's War, I wouldn't call that nothing. But not as much. Okay, all right, and maybe that, all of that stuff that happened that kind of spurred Bacon's rebellion was a little overwhelming for those folks down there. But I would say, talk to the people in Deerfield, Connecticut that got slaughtered by the Native Americans. What else could attribute to all of these babies being born and surviving and spreading out?
Healthier area?
It is healthier. The climate is healthier. You don't have the hot, you don't have the muggy, you don't have the mosquitoes, you don't have the spread of disease like you do in the Chesapeake. And so healthier living conditions means people are going to live longer. And if they have a lot of kids, those kids are going to survive. And so that's going to have a major, dare I say, sociological impact on the expansion and development of New England. So you can see here by 1650, the spreading and establishment of new colonies in New England, mostly all based on religion, although you are seeing a lot of people engaging in trade. Rhode Island, Connecticut, founded by, spreading Puritans. New Hampshire, at the time, becomes a very mercantilist colony. So the spread of the colonies in New England is rapid. It's based on healthy conditions. It's based on a lot of people coming to New England. There are opportunities. You have a variety of things that you can do that's not one cash crop. It's not, to put it in your parlance, it's not all about tobacco. It is a widely varied, variegated economy in New England. They're doing lumber, they're doing fishing, they're doing manufacturing, they're doing, all manner of things. Subsistence farming. You have more opportunities to do things in New England. So that's going to be very appealing to people. But lest you think that it is somehow some sort of democratic utopia in New England where everybody can do what you feel, remember who founded these colonies. Puritans. And Puritans are not do as you feel people, they are do as we say people. And so living in New England Puritan society, you are dominated by Puritan philosophy, which can be summed up with those couple of bullets up there. They believe in Calvinism and predestination. What does that mean? Predestination. Yeah, Aaron.
They believe that people were like damned at birth.
At birth, God, even before you're conceived, God has a plan and knows exactly where you're going to go. You are predestined to either go to heaven or H-E-double hockey sticks. Now, how do we know if you are a pure person and you've got an evidence of God's grace? You are a visible saint. You are a full church member. You are a member of the elect, i.e., you're special. God is smiling on you. And how do you know that? You testify. You stand up in church and you testify. This is how I know I've got evidence of God's grace. You know what the best sign of evidence of God's grace was? Economic success. God is smiling on me because I am wealthy. God wants me to be wealthy, and so therefore I am a member of the elect, and therefore I have the ability to be a full church member, which means ipso facto, I say what goes in this community. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. The rich find a way to secure their power and make decisions. And if you were a have-not, if you were poor, well, you know what? That's God's plan for you. Accept your place. God wants you to be poor. So enjoy the ride. Oh, yeah, you can't vote, you can't participate, you can't do this, you can't do that. Just let the rich people take care of it. Because we've got God on our side. You, the unwashed masses, no, you just do what we tell you to do. So subjugation, people being told what to do by the elites, yeah, that's all part of God's plan. God wants it that way. Using religion to maintain their status in society. I'm using all sociological terms here, but... Now, but you say to yourself, wait a minute, what about the Mayflower Compact? What about the will of the majority? What about written constitutions and general courts and town halls? That all sounds very democratic. No. There's democracy among the elites. They get together and decide and vote and debate and all that stuff. The restians, no, you do what the town tells you to do. You do what the leaders tell you to do. Because Puritans believed that democracy and freedom was akin to anarchy. And so these self-governing towns, these general courts, these body of liberties, yeah, they were for the elites. Freemen. Freemen were landowners, successful people in the community who were full members of the church. They were the ones who could participate. Everybody else? Now, one thing that the Puritans did and get right is their belief in compulsory education. What does it mean to be compulsory? You must do it. So, Massachusetts, as early as the 1640s, passes a law that says if the community has 50 or more people in it, they must provide a tax-supported public school teacher. Compulsory education, as early as the 1640s, must provide a teacher. To teach what? To teach what? Socrates? Euclidean geometry? Theology. The Bible. Because education meant access to the Bible. You learn your alphabet, you learn how to read, you learn how to write, you learn how to think, you can interact with your Bible. That is the main goal here. So it all has religious underpinnings to it. Harvard and other colleges, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, all founded at that time not to teach marine biology or food chemistry or whatever else these colleges teach. No, it was to train ministers, to go out and recruit more people to the flock. Harvard was founded in 1636. There's a great line in the movie The Social Network. Anybody see that movie? Now, there's a great line where these guys go into an office in Harvard and the secretary in the president's office yells at one of the kids for sitting in a chair improperly, and she goes, "Son, you don't understand. There is furniture in this room that's older than the republic it exists in." So why would anybody want to rebel against this? By the way, I will be collecting your top 10 list at the end, so just so you're aware. Why would anybody want to rebel against this or challenge this? This is beautiful. I love being told what to do all the time. Yeah.
There's like no chance for you to move up.
Okay, there's very little opportunity for you to move up or to gain power. That's true, and people don't like being stuck in a rut. Yeah.
There's almost no freedoms.
There are almost no freedoms, and heaven forbid you should have an independent thought in your head that ran counter to Puritan ideology. So, Roger Williams, Anne Hutchinson, what's their beef? What's their bag? Yeah.
Williams didn't support the separation of church and state.
Yes, he came up with this radical idea that church leaders should also not be political leaders. What a crazy idea! Where do you think he got that crazy idea that could lead to chaos? Where in the world do you think Roger Williams came up with that crazy idea that the leader of the political sphere shouldn't also be the leader of the religious sphere? England! He's looking at the chaos back in England. And actually, if you were the minister in a town, you could also not serve as mayor. That was a rule. Roger Williams also believed that everybody should be allowed to practice religion in their own way. Freedom of religion. freedom of religion and the separation of church and state. Very American values. And here they are in the 1630s. Guys, I'm trying to show you where the cornerstone foundations are of this country, and here's one of them. What about Anne Hutchinson? Yeah!
She challenged Puritan, ideals for the way women should act by preaching her own ideals.
And you are making a mistake that 95% of AP students make. You haven't told me what those specific ideals were. She had ideals. Oh, the ideals she had. They were idyllic, but we don't know what those ideals were. And that's the important part.
She had this, big problem with a lot of the church members. I remember she said, none of these people are elect, and she only considered, 2 people to honestly be elect.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Alright, yeah, oh, that's fine. That's good. We'll add to it, Dave.
She meant that, they saw a vision of the Holy Spirit or something like that. They saw God, talk to God.
Okay, so how does that challenge Puritan authority? See, work smart, not hard. Go.
I think it said something about, you could, believe in God and have, interactions with Him, but you didn't have to go to church. Something about that?
Yes, and if you did the vocabulary, it would be under Anne Hutchinson, and they're right next to each other. Anne Hutchinson and antinomianism. Roger Williams, there you go. He founds Rhode Island as a religious haven for people who have liberty of conscience, who want to practice religion in their own way. Roger Williams is considered to be a rebel because of his crazy ideas of religious freedom and separation of church and state. What a nut. We can't have that kook running around Massachusetts Bay, so John Winthrop kicks him out. And then you've got Anne Hutchinson, who says, you don't need to listen to the church members. You don't need to listen to the church elite, because if you know that you are a member of the elect, you don't need to do what they tell you to do. You're going to heaven anyway, so it's a free-for-all. Party! Can you imagine how dangerous that idea was in Puritan-controlled Massachusetts Bay? John Winthrop, my God, his eyes must have been bugging out. First of all, you got a person running around saying that you don't have to listen to what the leaders of the community say, and second of all, it's a woman. And she's challenging the men. She said, look, man, if I know I'm going to heaven, why do I have to follow the rules? I'm going to heaven either way. So, whatever, I'll do what I want. Guys, this is not a do-as-you-feel society. This is a do-as-we-say society. And so Anne Hutchinson is also booted out of Massachusetts Bay. She winds up in Rhode Island. She winds up in Connecticut. She eventually winds up in upstate New York, where her and her family are hacked to pieces by the local native tribes. And when John Winthrop caught wind that Anne Hutchinson and her entire family were massacred by Indians, he laughed. He said, well, that's God's plan. My friends, the test is a national test. They like to make sure that there's a and I'm not being cynical, I'm being realistic, that there's a question there for everybody. And I think I told you this at the beginning. There's a black question, there's a Latino question, there's an art question, there's a literature question, there's a labor union question, there's a woman question, feminist studies question. There you go, that's it. Guys, I've seen Ann Hutchinson on every release exam I've looked at because she checks a box. There's a woman who challenged a male-dominated society. We've asked a question to appeal to the ladies. Know your test makers. They're checking boxes. So, of Roger Williams and Ann Hutchinson, make sure you know Ann Hutchinson. But also Roger Williams. You've also got the Quakers. And the Quakers are kind of weird. The Quakers are kind of screwy. They believe that God is in everyone. That everybody has an inner light. And so therefore, everyone's equal. Everybody. Everybody. Wait a minute. Yeah, I understand. You got some whites and blacks. They equal? Quaker says, yeah. Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. We got whites, Native Americans. Native Americans are equal? They're equal! Everybody's got God in them. So, of course, the Quakers are driven out of every frickin' society they settle in. These crazy people going around saying that everybody's equal. Yes?
Under, like, board of officials or whatever, it was not uncommon at all to have half of them be, like, elder women.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't, like, flip out if they spoke their mind.
Yes, I know. Men and women were equal in the eyes of the Quaker Church. I love Quakers. I'm a big fan of that whole equality thing. So Quakers are seen as rebellious as well. All right. Now, let's see here. I'm looking at the takeaways. Spread of colonies in New England and Virginia and the impact on and conflict with native populations. Did you have a takeaway about New England and Native Americans? Any takeaway? Hey, wow, the Native Americans really tried to put up a fight. Boy, they really did not succeed. Yeah. The Pequot War. Yeah, in 1636, the Native Americans are going to fight back against the expansion of Puritans into other areas of New England. In particular, when Connecticut is founded in 1636, the Pequots are going to fight back, and they are going to lose. Now, originally, the Puritans believed that Native Americans could be that the Puritans could be converted to Christianity, but they eventually abandoned that idea. They believed that the natives were too far gone, that they practiced what was called natural liberty. They were too undisciplined. They could not be converted. And so if you could not be converted, you must be removed. So that is going to be the policy, to remove Native Americans from land that is being settled by these Puritan communities. Disease warfare takes out a majority of the New England tribes. The first of the conflicts is the Pequot War, 1636-37. Eventually, the Native Americans are going to try one last-ditch attempt to unify and fight back against expansion, and that takes place in 1675-76, and that's called King Philip's War, or Metacomet. He's the leader of the Wampanoag Indians. What he does is he tries to put together a confederation of Native Americans and say, hey, look, we've all got the same problem. So can we put aside our little petty differences and work together to stop the spread of these Englishmen? And by then it's too late. There aren't enough Native Americans to fight back. And King Philip's War ends in 1676 with Metacomet being defeated. And this is important because after King Philip's War, most of these native tribes leave New England. And move west. And so, healthy climate, opportunity to make money, native resistance wiped away. This looks like a great place for people to come. And you see the population of New England skyrocket. Here's King Philip's War. There you go. Native Americans removed. Population explodes. By the way, 1676, mile marker year. Because you had two big things happen in 1676. One in New England, one in the Chesapeake. What's the big thing in New England's King Philip's War? What's the other big thing?
The rebellion, Bacon's rebellion.
Yummy, yummy bacon! And you see over time that the population is going to explode because of the mass migration of people coming from England. Why are they coming from England? Opportunity. Opportunity to make money. The fact that there's limited land available in England through what's called the enclosure system. Looking for jobs, looking to be independent, not necessarily looking for religious freedom, although they are trying to escape this political turmoil that's going on in England. I put up here the line of succession and what their, the family name, and then what religion they were. I mean, look at the insanity going on here. You got a Protestant, then a Catholic, then a Protestant, then Catholics, then Protestants, then Catholics, then Protestants. And so you're either in or you're out, or you're in or you're out, or you're in or you're out. Now, eventually, in New England, the Puritans are going to start to become outnumbered. Kind of like the Catholics were outnumbered in Maryland by the Protestant planters, and so therefore, in order to maintain power, the people in the Calvert family in Maryland passed the Act of Toleration in 1649 to welcome everybody who believed in the baby Jesus. You're going to have the same phenomenon in New England, where the Puritans are going to have to come up with some interesting way to maintain their power in the face of a growing non-Puritan population. So what they come up with is something called the Halfway Covenant. See, you could be a full church member if you were able to talk about your conversion experience and demonstrate evidence of God's grace. However, the Halfway Covenant allows the children of the elect, the children of the full church members, to be partway members in the church. More butts in seats. That's what they're looking for. butts in seats. And so, what winds up happening in the Puritan church is your membership is based not on your conversion experience, but on who your parents are. You inherit your seat. Does anybody in here belong to the Congregationalist church? Nobody? Congregationalists? Should I get in your hot pocket? All Dr. Evil. Where was I? Yes, ancestry. You inherited your church. Yeah, and the Congregationalist church today is the Puritan church. It's the old Puritan church. And a lot of religious conservatives within the Puritan church said, "Whoa, wait a minute. You're letting in people into the church who may or may not have evidence of God's grace. They may be tainted." They called it watered-down Puritanism. Well, they didn't use that terminology. You get the idea. And so they went around the countryside warning Puritans about watered-down Puritanism, warning Puritans that they seemed to be more concerned with making a buck than with saving their souls. And they conducted what were called Jeremiads. Now, any of you folks who teach Sunday school, I would hope at some point you taught about Jeremiah. Anybody come across that in Sunday school? Am I the only? Yeah, did you? Okay. Do you know anything about Jeremiah?
He was a prophet.
Yes.
He went around preaching to people about God.
That's what prophets do. Can you give me something more specific?
No.
What was his particular bailiwick?
I don't know. I mean,
He is a fire and brimstone preacher. He is a guy who went around warning the Israelites that they were losing their way, that they needed to reconnect with God, that they were worried about too many earthly things and not worried enough about saving their souls and being pure of spirit. These Jeremiads, these traveling preachers, went around the countryside warning people to get right with God. Otherwise, you're going to HE double hockey sticks. Traveling preachers going around trying to save people's souls. What does that sound like? It's a big fancy word. It begins with an E. Evangelism! Absolutely! This is the beginnings of evangelical Christianity in America. And it is the beginning of something called the Great Awakening. Kind of a religious revival in America. Which, by the way, is a purely American phenomenon. It's not imported from Europe. They didn't import it from any place else. It started here as an American idea. Now, if you take a look at this over here, okay? Henry, Mary, Elizabeth, James I, Charles I, these are the Stuarts, the Scottish kings, the Catholic kings of England. Charles I in 1636 is deprived of his nasty oxygen habit by having his head removed from the rest of his body. He had a headectomy. He is overthrown by a group of Puritans. He's overthrown by a group of Puritans, and they establish a Puritan dictatorship in England under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell that exists from 1636 to 1660, which means the Puritans in New England have now got a friend in Parliament. The Catholic Calvert family, that's why they come to Maryland in 1636, because they're escaping that. Now, since England is in the middle of this big dukeroo between Catholics and Protestants, between the Royalists who want to see the restoration of the Stuart dynasty and the Puritans who don't, what does that mean for America? If the English government's in the middle of essentially a civil war, what does that mean for the folks here in America? Yeah. They're not being watched. And if Americans, and if the folks here aren't, I'm calling them Americans, and if they're not being watched, what are they going to do? Well, maybe. Huh? They're going to get ideas. All sorts of ideas. Oh, the ideas they'll get. So crazy. Crazy ideas like, hey, we can govern ourselves. We can establish our own constitutions. We can establish our own representative government. We can trade with whomever we want. Wacky, crazy ideas. And America is essentially left on its own. For about, I don't know, 1607, Jamestown, to 1660, when Charles II is restored to the throne. 50-some years of America doing its own thing. Politically doing its own thing, governing itself, making up its own laws, trading with whomever they want. Sounds like they're pretty independent, because England ain't watching the store. It's when Charles II is restored to the throne, and he comes on board and says, all right, Sonny Jim, I'm the king again. And now I'm coming in charge here, and I've got this whole empire, so what do we got? Because the king's main job is to maintain power, and you maintain power by having money. And the crown has money by trade, by having an empire. So Charles II looks around and says, all right, Sonny Jim, where's this empire I've been hearing about? Well, we got an empire over in America, King. Oh, yeah? Well, what have they done for me lately? Well, they haven't done really anything. They're doing their own thing. Oh, isn't that magical? Charles II says in 1660, we need to get a stronger grip on what these Americans are doing. First of all, we need to finish colonizing the North American continent, because all we got is Virginia and New England. So we're going to finish what we started. And that's why you have what's called the Restoration Colonies. The Carolinas. Well, it originally was one colony, Carolina, that splits into two. Rice planters dominating South Carolina, disaffected Virginians dominating North Carolina. And these colonies are going to be settled by yeoman farmers from Virginia, meaning poor subsistence farmers from Virginia, not Mr. Yeomans. And then in South Carolina, you're going to have settlement by sugar planters in the Caribbean, who are going to bring their model of sugar plantation and production to the cultivation of rice in South Carolina. And they're also going to bring the slaves with them. Going to take the slaves there? Yeah, sure, they're welcome. You've also got Georgia. So, in the Carolinas, to use your vernacular, they're all about the rice. And they're all about the indigo. That's how they made money. If Virginia made money off of tobacco, the Carolinas made money off of rice and indigo, and in particular South Carolina. Notice what isn't being produced here that you would think would be being produced? Cotton. Cotton is never the answer prior to the American Revolution, because you haven't had the cotton gin invented yet. So cotton is a very laborious task prior to the American Revolution. In Georgia, Georgia is founded by James Oglethorpe, a philanthropist. My God, another big word. You guys have got to learn Greek and Latin. If I could make a recommendation, take a semester of Greek or Latin. Phila or Philos, Greek for love. Anthrop is the study of man. Anthropology, the study of ancient man. For the love of men. And I'm not talking man love. I'm talking for the love of people. Philanthropists are people who want to do nice things for other people. And Oglethorpe wants to create a colony for people who've just gotten out of prison, so that they can have a fresh start. England wants to found Georgia as a buffer zone between the wealthy colony of South Carolina, producing all that rice, and the Spanish in Florida, because the Spanish and the English are still going at it. So Georgia provides a nice buffer zone. That's why Georgia is founded. Now, Charles II is also going to try and take that colony in New York from the Dutch. Here comes the British Navy into New York Harbor. And there they are, with the guns pointing at the Dutch. And the Dutch are like, sorry, this was yours? Right, okay. We're going to get going now. It's been swell. See you later. And so the British come in, take over New York, as it's now called, after James II, or James, the Duke of York, and they are going to make it a British colony. So women's freedom that they had in New Amsterdam, that is reduced. Free blacks living in New Amsterdam, reduced. And alliances with the Iroquois Indians in upstate New York to do battle against the French. Really, you just need to know that the British took over this from the Dutch. Whoa. And then, the big ticket. Pennsylvania. Founded by William Penn, a Quaker. Well, wait a minute, I thought the Quakers were on the outs with everybody. Yeah, I know. But for Charles II to regain the throne of England required him to owe a lot of people some favors. And one of the people he owed a favor to was William Penn's father, who helped him get back on the throne. So when William Penn's father dies, Charles II still has an outstanding debt to the Penn family, and Charles II says, all right, Billy Penn, all right, I'll tell you what, how about this? I'll give you land over in North America. That way I get rid of the Quakers and I pay off my debt. And so Penn establishes a colony at Philadelphia, and the colony of Pennsylvania grows based on Quaker values. Freedom for all, opposed to slavery, freedom of religion, peace with the Indians. They're pacifists, and they uphold a moral code of doing good, but you basically can come to Pennsylvania and do what you want. It's like the exact opposite of Puritan New England. This is the do-as-you-want society. You want to come here and practice religion? Great. You want to come here and be an atheist? Great. Do what you want. Which colony are you going to want to go to if you're in England And you've got a choice. I could go to Puritan New England, do as we say. I could go to the Chesapeake and try to make a scrape of it doing tobacco. I could go to South Carolina, where it's really freaking hot. Or I could go to Pennsylvania and do what I want. People are going to go to Pennsylvania. And you can see here, Philadelphia, of the 4 major cities in the colonies, it's the last one founded. It's the fastest growing. People wanted to go to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is going to be one of the largest cities in the world. At one time, it was the fastest growing city in the world. Because of these Quaker values of freedom and opportunity and leaving you alone. As a matter of fact, Pennsylvania is going to attract people who aren't even English. What are they?
Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah, but what is a Pennsylvania Dutch?
Dutch person.
No, they're not Dutch.
An Amish person.
Germans.
They're Germans. Because you know what the German word for German is? Deutsch. So, of course, Americans never say things the way they're supposed to be said. They always bastardize the pronunciation. And they come up with, well, they're the Pennsylvania Dutch. And so, you've got the Pennsylvania Deutsch, Germans moving to Pennsylvania from Germany for religious freedom reasons. You've also got Scots-Irish. Remember I talked about breeding the Catholic out of the Irish? Yeah. You've got those guys also coming to America as well. And so Pennsylvania becomes, dare I use a big word, a polyglot. A polyglot. Based on the context clues, what does that big vocabulary word mean?
Place where everyone can go, a lot of diversity.
There's a lot of diversity. It's diverse. I will improve your vocabulary this year. You will use bigger words instead of big and stuff. And it was good. Alright, mercantilism. Guys, I know that looks like a lot there. Work smart, not hard. Work smart, not hard. Mercantilism. Okay? The big thing here, we've already talked about Hacklet. We already talked about what mercantilism is. Okay? Colonies exist for the benefit of the mother country. But what does that mean? For Charles II, who has just been restored to the throne, how can we mandate that these colonies economically benefit the mother country? You pass laws. This is the takeaway. The Navigation Acts. They are British laws that tell the Americans what they can and cannot trade. This is England's attempt to regulate American trade. So, all the valuable stuff, sugar, tobacco, rice, wool, cotton, all has to be shipped to England. Manufacturing in America, not allowed. Everything has to be shipped to England. England will make it and sell it back to the Americans at a substantially higher rate. And it has to be on British ships, and all this stuff has to go through British ports. So all that freedom of trade that America had been involved in, that is verboten, forbidden. Because America is involved in this larger transatlantic trade. Now, I know you've seen triangular trade before, but triangular trade is more than sugar for rum for slaves. Triangular trade refers to this international trade, this transatlantic trade of raw materials and manufactured goods and manpower that exists in the Atlantic. And America has basically been trading with whomever they want with no regulation and oversight. And the King of England in 1660 says that is coming to an end. We will tell you who to trade with, where to trade, and how to trade. Now, you know Americans. You know the American character. Do you think Americans like to be told what to do? What do Americans love to do when they're told to do something? They like to not do it. As a matter of fact, they like to do the opposite. And so you wind up with a great deal of smuggling, illegal trade, breaking the law. Which means that if the Americans are going to break the law, what is England going to have to do?
Send people over.
They're going to have to send people over here to tell the Americans what to do and watch over them. And that's why in 1686 you have the establishment of something called the Dominion of New England. Town halls, gone. General court, gone. Free men making the rules, gone. Puritan authority, gone. England names a governor of New England and takes all of the individual colonies and meshes them together into one big colony. Elected legislatures, gone. Land grants and contracts, gone. Religious toleration for all Protestants. Why do that? Undermine Puritan authority. By the way, when did the Salem witch trials take place? Lo, about this time. Why? Because the Puritans in New England were paranoid. They saw devils all around them. It was against this political context that their power was being taken away by the crown. This was an attempt by the English government and the English crown to tell the Americans what to do and regulate colonial trade. So what do the Americans do when they're faced with British tax collectors and British troops and British governors? What do? They rebel. Well, wait a minute. This isn't the American Revolution. This is 100 years before the American Revolution.
The Glorious Revolution?
It is known as the Glorious Revolution, and it takes place in conjunction with a rebellion in England. As a matter of fact, the rebellion in England takes place first, and it inspires the Americans. The British have finally had it with the Stuarts. And they overthrow James II. It had been James II who named Edmund Andros as the governor of the Dominion of New England. Andros was a dictator. Andros was, put simply, a dictator. And he had the King of England's backing. So when the British overthrow James II, the Americans see that as an opportunity to overthrow Edmund Andros. And they literally run him out of New England. He had to escape. Guys, Americans organizing themselves and rebelling against colonial authority. Sounds like a revolution to me. And it happened 100 years before the American Revolution. Yeah.
Did Andros try to escape from this little bit?
Yes, he did. He did. Oh, and James II is replaced by James's daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange, who is Dutch. And so the King and the Queen of England are Dutch and Scottish. I can't remember the last time they've had an English king. Yeah.
Wait, like Dutch and German or
Dutch.
Real
Dutch, from Holland, Dutch. He's a Dutch prince. William is a Dutch prince who married James II's daughter, Mary. So by giving it to Mary, it makes it legitimate. You've got the same line, but instead of the Stuarts running the show, now you've got the Hanovers running the show. So this glorious revolution in England actually leads to a rebellion in the American colonies. That's pretty impressive. By the way, free response question last year, question number 2 on the exam. Analyze America's and Britain's mercantilist relationship 1630 to 1700. It was all about navigation acts, triangular trade, glorious revolution, dominion of New England. Those were the 4 things that we're looking for. I would